Hi guys, so just to run through the content that we covered in this session, this most recent session. So we looked at the product analysis exam question. We looked at maths content that's in the papers, both papers, and then performance characteristics of fibers, and that was in a past paper question as well. So first of all, the homework past paper question that we looked at on the football kits. So figure 2 and figure 3, we talked about the difference between like a compare and contrast question and an analyze and evaluate question. For this type of question where it's analyze and evaluate, you just need to be giving the advantages and disadvantages for each of the images it's giving you, each of the items it's talking to you about. So you need to have given a detailed analysis and to have made sure that you speak about both figures. So this is where I was saying it is difficult because I can't say if you give 5 points about figure 2 and 5 points about figure 3, then that will get you full marks. It's up to the examiner whether they feel you have given a detailed enough response. So all you can do is do your best in the time that you're given. As we said before, 1 mark per minute, basically. You guys get a little bit longer. So roughly 6 minutes, but maybe a bit more, maybe more like 9 minutes, because I think we worked out you get 1.5 minutes per mark. So as long as you spend that amount of time on this question, then that's how I would gauge it. So you need to make sure that you have given a variety of reasons to explain the suitability of each football kit for sportswear. Okay, so there's indicative content that you could include. Some of these we thought were a bit strange. It's usually the case, and some of them seem obvious. So again, this is something that's come up before. Make sure you do state the obvious and also look in depth at the images. So really look closely. And although it's not a compare question, it's really useful to look at the differences. I think I said spot the difference between the two images because those are the things that are good to talk about. So they're often the things that would be mentioned and that they're looking for. So, when we look at the two and the main differences, it could be the length of the sleeves, it could be the cut of the jumper, like of the top, the fact that it's got the ribbing around the cuffs and around the waistline, and then length of the socks, height of the football boots, football shoes, trainers, whatever, and then also the colours. So we spoke about the fact that it's black and white for figure 2, but you can still roughly tell um, what you can get an indication of colour and at least pattern. The top doesn't have anything about the team name or the player name or anything like that. So, there's stuff there that you can talk about too. So as long as you spot the differences between the two, don't talk about the fact that they're different, but that will just give you an indication of what you could talk about. Make sure that you talk about both of the figures and in as much detail as you can in the time, both advantages and disadvantages. Then that's what you need to do. So then, again, I'm not going to read through all of these, but there were disadvantages and then the same for advantages and disadvantages for figure 3. So hopefully that was helpful to go through that one. Then the next part of that question, it was about the fibre content. So this one is a compare and contrast question, and it is asking you for performance characteristics of these fibres. So if you do get a question like this in your exam and you don't know that specific fibre, or off the top of your head, you can't think of the specific performance characteristics of nylon, this is why I kind of talked before about grouping them together and making sure you knew that at least at this stage. Because if you know that wool is a natural fibre, cotton is a natural fibre, one is from an animal, one is from a plant, then there are general characteristics that we spoke about last session that can help you to answer this question. So the same for nylon, polyester, elastane, like you should realize that they're synthetic. So if you look at the general characteristics of a synthetic fiber, what are they usually? And then it's quite useful to know those. That should give you enough information at least. And if you happen to remember the detailed information about that particular fiber, then that's brilliant. So a good way to structure this, what we said was to give a subheading. So for you to say absorbency, and then talk about figure 2 and figure 3 and directly compare them. So you can do bullet points as long as the bullet point usage doesn't take away from the detail you're writing. It's just a really good way to structure it because you can make sure that you are always directly comparing the two and in each kind of category. So let's say you had 5 subheadings, absorbency, strength, whatever, and then under each one you have 1 point for one figure, 1 point for another figure, and that should be enough to go through and do that. So again, same in terms of how much you're expected to write. It's just making sure that it's a detailed comparison and you are talking about the performance characteristics of both of them, a variety of key points. Again, it's up to the examiner what they determine as detailed or not. But yeah, if you just read through that top bracket, that should help. We're all aiming for top bracket, of course. And then here's the indicative content that you could include. As I said, as a number, roughly, if you included probably 5 of these, that would be enough. But if you can include more in the time, then that's great. I'll let you read through those again. Okay, then we talked about the maths content. So we talked about the fact that the maths in your exam will always be applicable to textiles. So it's always going to be something that is relevant to a fashion textiles question. And that could be to do with calculating fiber blends, fabric shrinkage, area and volume calculations, maybe for pattern cutting, cost calculations to work out how much material costs are, production costs, profit, that kind of thing. Scale and proportion, again, for pattern and design. Data interpretation, so there's often a question where you may have to plot onto a graph or at least read a graph or chart. Okay, so then I won't go through these, but we went through these practice questions. And then we did an exam question on cumulative frequency and plotting onto a graph, doing median, upper quartile, lower quartile. Okay, so next session, we will go on to our next topic. We will review some math stuff though, and we probably will keep doing that just to kind of keep it fresh in your minds too. Okay, hope that's helpful. I'll see you soon.